And that is a concern of ethics, that's a concern of high touch, that's a concern of where the future will be, not only in terms of Islamic education, but in terms of its education as a whole. So I've twisted the title a little bit. I put Islam at the back, because I thought there would be 4 vice chancellors of the Islamic University, and therefore giving emphasis on Islamic education. But now I've changed it a little bit to make it a kind of wrap-up as far as Islam is concerned. Otherwise, I think it is almost applicable to all of us in this particular room. Let me start off by recapping some of the things that I said in Ilorin. Yeah? Incidentally, I'm going to also speak on behalf of my African colleagues after going through some experience of quite a pleasant one in Nigeria, and trying to understand the psychic of Africa vis-a-vis Malaysia, if you were to collaborate. And oftentimes, when we collaborate, we do not understand the psychic of the counterpart, and therefore, a collaboration will not speak as smoothly as possible. In my presentation in Ilorin, we talk about the shift of what is happening today in the world of knowledge, and that shift is basically a shift from a mechanical system to an organic system, landing ourselves in what we call the age of biology. It used to be the age of chemistry, it used to be the age of physics. Now that it's gone, because everything else now is contextualized in the word bio. You can put in front of your name bio, you'll probably be okay. Bio will shine. You know, you are very in this particular set, because everything else is bio, not just as it stands what it was before. And that is the world we are in. And this is a nice place to be, because then we can start to talk about humanizing systems, because it's a biological system. We can talk about the root of organic roots of systems, no longer artificially grown, it is naturally grown. We can talk about the environment, we can talk about sustainability, because this is part and parcel of quote-unquote the biological system where we are in today, and hence where we will be in the future. And therefore, there will be a kind of a shift that everybody will have to focus on. And that shift, I think, apart from what has been mentioned by Dr. Asma, these are the general shifts that we will see. And you find that the shift is really very diametrically opposite from one another. We're talking about the industrial age, now we're in the post-industrial age, we're talking about information, we're talking about innovation, we're talking about knowledge. Indeed, we will be talking about wisdom. And this is the far end of where we will proceed as far as the change is concerned. We are no longer talking about a mechanical clockwork kind of a thing. We're talking about how do we relate in the context of ecology. How do things network with one another? How do we work with one another? And therefore, this whole idea of collaboration is a very natural process. That I want to work with Nigeria not because of my economic interest, but it is the kind of networking that we need to do, a part and parcel of the natural process of human beings trying to help one another. That is the context you are coming. So you can go down the list, and you find that this is where we need to start adjusting our mindsets from an industrialist perspective to a really human sort of dimension. The question that Dr. Amir asked, how do we actually get into this high-touch mode of thinking? It is a process that goes not from outside in, but inside out. You start really from your heart, and this is where your ugly, I think, becomes definitely very relevant in the context of where we are going to move. And therefore, it is self-organizing in a particular sense. You don't have to wait anymore, because it's part and parcel of the self to move. The fitrah, as it were, that you need to organize. You need to get things done. And you need to make all this collaboration that we have for one another in a kind of a stewardship, in a manner that it will fit into the natural world as well. So it is a very, very major shift. And if you are still isolated with the old thinking, I think it is difficult then to move forward, particularly in talking about the high touch. In summary, I would say this. If the system before thinks that you probably is a paragon of everything else, that you harbor this kind of an egocentric feeling, that you know everything else and everybody do not know much, I think now this has changed. We are moving from a very hierarchical structure where it depends on one person or probably rigidly defined by the structure itself. We are moving into what we call now a distributed community-led, community-based network structure. that you and the germs and the bacteria and the Ebola virus is just one and the same. You know, the Ebola virus can reside on you, and you can reside on the Ebola virus if you choose to. It is no longer protective in that particular sense. And therefore the networking, the kind of relationship that you need to build with one another is a relationship that needs to be nurtured from day one. It is not doing science because we want to do this, but because science is part and parcel of it. What is science after all? Your mother frying fish is science, but we never look at it that way. Somebody flying a kite is science, but it is not part and parcel of how we look at science. Yeah? Spinning a top is science, otherwise you will never learn how the top can spin. But we never look at it that way because it is not looked at as a distributed system the way we understand what knowledge is all about. So knowledge society and knowledge management, as it were, is part and parcel of living. It's part and parcel of the daily life, of the ecosystem that we talk about. It's no longer meant only for people in university with PhD and professor and countries. These are all the old thinking. The new thinking is for everyone, and everybody else must have access to that particular knowledge. So that is the kind of shift that we're going to see. And therefore, organizing a university becomes a different mandate altogether. University is no longer an ivory tower. The university is part and parcel of the community. The university is successful, the community is not successful, the university is a failure. The university and the community must go in hand in hand, and therefore I really applaud this whole idea of trying to make the university building the society in the context of the flood or otherwise whatever else that we are experiencing today. And this then could be changed into a different way of looking at it. Yeah? The 3 R's of reading, writing, arithmetic is no longer just important, but it has to be translated into something which is meaningful for life. And therefore you must learn something that relates to the environment. You have to be resourceful with the environment. You need to restrain some of the things that you are already having in the abundance. The question of this economic constraint, yeah? the idea of austerity, the kind of savings that you need to make, not because you want to make the saving, but because it's part and parcel of the daily life, the daily sort of practice that we need to do. And the last one is the R, what I call the reciprocity. Yeah? It is very Malay in this particular context, orang berbudi kita berbahasa. It's a kind of mantra that you learn how to be grateful and how to actually give and not just receive all the time. And this is what I call the paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift will move from a very exploitative kind of environment to a very restorative kind of environment. To appreciate, to learn how to make the best, more for less, and not the other way around. And therefore, this is what it is all about. At the end of the day, the cliche you understand why we talk about sustainability all the time, because it has a different mindset. Yeah? When the Nagoya conference ends in November this year, the consensus is basically education needs to be sustainable. Education must reinforce a sustainability mindset. Education is about the future which is sustainable. And that is perhaps the bottom line as far as the shift is concerned, moving from an unnatural environment to a natural environment of biology. And this is where I probably need to start contrasting where we are today and where we should be in the future. Today is about moving up the value chain. Today is about creating wealth. Today is about Me Too and also the materialism that we can garner for ourselves. And this is why I am very worried at the end of the day when you talk about the kind of graduate that we're going to produce. The kind of graduate that we say you have to be employable. And employability is part and parcel of the game, which all stands out to make sure that our graduate will be siloed in the market kind of thinking. And that is the kind of thinking which now is capitalized in this particular word called human capital. I have a distinct problem with the word human capital, as you probably know by now, because it basically re-alienates all the values that I mentioned to you in the kind of a shift that we want to make. Human capital is basically the kind of people that the schools and the Tibet people will train. Yeah? Very skill-oriented and somehow rather devoid of the human touch and the human value. It is in its epistemology a neoliberal kind of a context that works for the marketplace and works for capitalism. If it is comfortable to you, then by all means go ahead. But certainly as a Muslim and a person who believes in conscience, I'm not comfortable with the word human capital. Often asked when you talk about where is the heart in human capital, we don't train the heart in human capital. Ya, di mana kita mendidik roh dan kalbu dalam modal insan? Tidak ada. Ya. And yet the philosophy, the national philosophy of education talks about insan seimbang. Where does the word human capital come in? Who brought it in? And therefore steer away from the very national philosophy of education. And it is something that I think we need to discuss. It is something that I think we need to start to grapple with. Using words that do not have context for us is a bigger problem as far as I'm concerned. And in the educational institution, we need to find a context so that this word has meaning as far as education is concerned. And because of the human capital sort of dimension, this is what we get at the end of the day. Yeah? We get a person who actually moves on a very materialistic point of view, that Greeks become the most celebrated kind of talent. A CEO can earn millions of dollars, despite the damage he or she has done. I mean, the classical example is when Bangladesh collapses. Millions and hundreds of people are dying, but the take-home pay for the CEO is in the millions. And I think there's no justification for this. Certainly, as a human person, I find it hard to reconcile when people are dying at the end of the day. You take home a pay package which is very, very obscene to me. Nigeria has got a very classical case of Shell. The Nigerian police will probably tell you. People are dying, the whole place now is turned into a kind of a deserted place. But there you are, Shell is making money out of the people that exploits in Nigeria. And I think this is something that we need to take a stand as far as education is concerned, as an educationist, because we know the value of education is to train people rather than just to make money out of it. So, kind of this so-called globalized world that we've been told so often, that human capital is the thing that makes economy work, that makes countries successful, is done at the expense of what I call the value system. So one you have value, the other ones have values and talk of virtues. One you have the people that works for industry as a production sort of a system. The other one is about the human person, the human being. We move up this chain, but we move down the other chain. And I think the compromise is too much for us today, unless and until we can put this in a balance. And that's where, again, your ugly becomes a very dry sort of venture to go into. What happened then when we talk this about human capital, we've got scandals like this. And these are not scandals done by people in small labs. These are done by Seoul National University, one of the most celebrated. If Asma put the rank of National University of Seoul, they're probably one of the top. But they also do scandals like this, which is described as the worst historical scandal as far as research is concerned. And when we talk to this guy, why do you do it? He says, I'm blinded by my work and my drive for achievement. And achievement in this particular context is just about material wealth rather than the person itself. So he is now a disgraced person, and he says, faking it in Korea, the biggest scientific fraud in history, and Korea earns that. Despite the many good things about Korea, Korea has got this blemish. And I think if you study Korea a little bit more, there's a book called something to do with Samsung. Nobody wants to translate this book, nobody's allowed to translate this book, because it tells you the scandal that Samsung has gone through to make what Samsung is today. And we only know the outside of Samsung, we do not know the inside of Samsung. The highest suicide rate in the world is in Korea. And my question would be, how can a successful country have the highest society in the world? Where has we gone wrong? If you are truly educated, then you probably will not resort to suicide one way or the other. And this is a kind of mismatch that education is, and people who plan for education probably have a blind spot on. And I think we in the university need to bring this out and question them, why is this blind spot not being rectified? So, what is the new academic challenge when we talk about publication, and so on and so forth? We are at the risk of running into the question of ethics. And it is a statement made by the Chancellor of the University of California, San Diego, a professor of anthropology, ethical standards. The true culprit is a ruthlessness of publish or perish doctrine driving professors to dishonesty. And there is enough evidence now to show that there's enough plagiarism, there's enough dishonesty, there's enough unethical practices in trying to drive this publish or perish. So I have no problem with ranking, I have no problem with publication, but how do we ensure that these are knowledge that is driven really from the heart, rather than just out of the pockets or pushed by some market sort of fancy that you must publish. Yeah? And to be on the safe side, there's now another maxim which says do or die. And now that you have the knowledge, what do you do with it? If you don't make use of this knowledge, translate it to the benefit of the people that actually pay for your education, pay for your university, then you are dying, you are about to die. So these two must go in hand. Publish or perish, do or die. The do or die is probably not popular in university because universities are not set to do that. But trust me, the time will come when people will ask you, what have you done for us with all the money that we've given you? Yeah? You cannot say, I've got 3 publications in ICI Journal, ISI Journal, so what? Neither can you say, I'm ranked number 20th in the world. So what? We are still poor, we are still dying, and we are still needing help. So what do you do with your education? And I think this is the issue of high touch that was brought up by Professor Asmah that needs to be drilled down a little bit more so that we understand how do we materialize it in the context of education. Yeah? It's a nice cartoon, perhaps that will stay in your mind. You sell fish, whatever it is. These stem cells are not meant for you, it is meant for people who lost. Suddenly he's got 3 hands. Yeah? And of course his answer to his boss is basically, I need to triple my publication. Yeah? So ethics do not count. I only want to work for my KPI. And this is what happened to the Professor Wong Suk in the Seoul National University. He fabricated data, he used data from his counterpart, graduate students, just to make sure that he strikes a good deal as far as his research is concerned. So how many times this happened, we do not know because we do not control it. Neither are we aware of it. But I'm quite sure if we let this on, it will be part and parcel of the culture in the academy. So at the end of the day, I would want to conclude that unless and until we are aware of what we are doing, putting the right markers and tracking it properly, we will be in a kind of a grid-driven mode. Universities will be asking for the things that they should not be asking for, because the push is basically to have more and more and more. And this is despite the market failure that we have seen. Despite the market saying you must do this and that, the market itself is not perfect, and there's a nice way of putting this. Yeah? Instead of good year, you have bad year. Xerox is hardly seen. Chrysler is crisis-like. Citibank, the umbrella is struck by lightning. Dow Jones instead of Dow Jones. All this market failure is happening, but the university is not aware of this market failure. The university still regards the market as the person who will tell you what to do at the end of the day. If they say don't teach philosophy, you will not teach philosophy because the students of philosophy are not marketable. Tell me what sort of education can we have without philosophy? Tell me what kind of science do you have if you do not understand philosophy? You don't have the roadmap. To me, philosophy is a roadmap. You don't have the roadmap. Where are you going to drive your knowledge? At the end of the day, we talk about science, about producing products like this that you can sell. You can make patents out of it. And the moment you can sell it, you are considered successful. But if this product kills people or pollute the world, you don't give a damn. Because you understand knowledge as something that you can sell and make money out of. And that's about the only bottom line that you are told, because you lack the philosophy and the understanding of what knowledge is all about. So that failure of marketplace now is translated to many other failures. You've got financial failures, you've got ecological failures, you've got failures of human security, you've got failures of, the environment and stuff. And all this is because the so-called market failure that we seem to be immune to, but it is manifested all over us in terms of that kind of a failure. And that failure, to me, becomes translated into an educational failure because we forget to educate people as what education is all about. So here you have a very good statement by David Orr, a very prominent scientist and also ecologist, that recognizes we are in a kind of a dire state as far as health is concerned, as far as prosperity is concerned, as far as the world is concerned. But he put the blame on very, very simple kind of analysis. It's worth noting that it is not the work of ignorant people, it's rather largely the results of work by people with BAs, BScs, LLBs, MBAs, PhD, in short, all of us in this room. We are the one that is responsible for this because the education that we give to our students are short of what it should be. Devoid of that soul, devoid of that philosophy, devoid of that larger human sort of touch that we talked about earlier. So if this is the contention, then I think we need to put it right. We need to bring back whatever is missing, the lacuna that is now existing in university or in education, so that we can have a better education system. And here is where I think USIM has got a tremendous role to play. If you want to talk about USIM as a future driver of education, I am confident that it will be so, provided we work the assignments now. We cannot wait for another day. At the end of the day, I think this is also what I talk in the Lorraine about, is basically the kind of tension that we need to settle. The tension between economy and social policies, the tension between ecology and economy, the tension between social policies and people in the context of culture, in the context of the norms, in the context of its tradition, in the context of its, the philosophy of the people of the land, which I will go back a little bit more later on. All this, I think, is an attention that education do not pay attention to. So when the economy says do certain things, we will just do certain things. We do not introspective look. What is it meant to ecology? How do you actually, structure your social structures? And how do you save the values and the norms of your own society? And I think these are kind of imbalance that we are going through, not only in Malaysia, and I think worldwide. The economy of prosperity has gone into economy of profits for a few individuals. And that's why in the conference that we had in Cape Town, one of the vice chancellors asked, why is it in a world of prosperity is a time which is worse in terms of discrimination? Why is it money is polarizing to a small group of people of less than 50, whereas the rest are not getting the kind of benefits that they ought to be getting? Where it has gone wrong? Again, back at this point to what education has done, or rather has not done. So, a kind of a simplistic overall view is basically not to start thinking in terms of silos, which we are thinking, and I think is one of the other major problems, I think, in many universities. That I'm a professor of physics, and therefore I can only talk physics. I don't want to talk about social science, neither do I talk about mathematics. I'm a Muslim, and therefore I don't want to know anything else, anything about Islam. That will be my take for that. Yeah? I'm a vice chancellor, and therefore you talk about something else. I don't want to talk about that. I think this is the day when we need now to start making amends, to break down the rules, to break down the barriers, to break down the walls, so that people can be a little bit more mobile in the context of knowledge. And this is where we have talked about this a million times, that the culture needs to be transitory in its approach, because knowledge, whether you like it or not, has gone into a convergence. Believe me, science started as natural philosophy, until some people in modern science say, no, science is about just technical things, physics and chemistry. And therefore we lose this whole context of what knowledge is all about in one convergence. And we are now in a different situation where we cannot solve the problem of the world by just talking about one discipline. Physics can never solve the problem of the world, neither do chemistry, neither do biology. We need to come together, and this is where the convergence of knowledge needs to take place. And I'm very worried when Malaysia talk only about STEM and not non-STEM. In other words, we're going to talk about science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Where is your social science? Where is your humanities? Where is your philosophy? Where is your ethics? It seems not to be important. And as much as the grouping talks about 6 student aspirations, and one of the aspirations is ethics and spirituality, as far as I know now, the tagging on ethics and spirituality is the lowest. They're good in leadership, they're good in thinking, they're good in knowledge, they're good in language perhaps, but on ethics and spirituality they are still very low. And in fact, people in the ministry that I interacted with do not even know how to actually track what ethics and spirituality is all about, because it is not part and parcel of the academic culture in Malaysia at least, and I'm sure elsewhere too. That is what I said to you in Ilorin. Yeah? But after that, I managed to get hold of this book, The Bright Continent. Yeah? And what I like about this book, it says, breaking rules and making change. Asma will probably know that I'm a rule breaker. Yeah? Breaking rules and making change. You will not be able to make change without breaking rules, take it from me. You have to break rules to make change. Yeah? And we are often reminded, don't break rules. If you break rules, we will give you this, this, and this. Yeah? In my time as a vice chancellor, I got 3 show cause letters for breaking rules. But you explain to them why you need to break these rules, because the change will not come. Yeah? And therefore, this breaking rule business, I think, is a business of everybody. You talk about innovation, it's about breaking rules. You talk about creativity, it's about breaking rules. You talk about moving differently, it's about breaking rules. You will never be able to do this without breaking rules. And let's not then look at breaking rules as something which is very criminal in its nature. Yeah? You have to break rules one way or another. The question of how do you break these rules? And this so contrasting to me when Africa often is known as a dark continent. It is the first book, perhaps after 130 years, that people talk about the bright continent. Yeah? And the dark continent is such that you cannot solve the problem of Africa until you bring another person in, and he's Tara. Tara must come in and solve your problem. Doesn't matter whether it's scantily led, doesn't matter. But you must bring somebody outside to solve your problem, and that is not my take. We can solve our own problem without bringing people from outside, because we have the knowledge. And this book confirms my feeling. Yeah? Let me go through very quickly on what it's all about. And again, in the contents of Dark Continent, I managed to get this. It is as recent as October 2013, KLM, mind you, a global airline, an international airline, still talks about the Dark Continent. And there's one email that comes from a passenger: if you continue to talk about the Dark Continent, we will not fly your airlines. And quickly they say, we apologize. Yeah? See how these blind spots that I talked to you about still exist in this world of borderless knowledge. What I liked about this book particularly, and I think you should read this because it's by a Nigerian American, yeah? I'll read it. It calls for a necessary shift, breaking the rules again, yeah? In our thinking about Africa. And to her, this is how Africa is defined. Africa is the home to several of the world's fastest growing economy, and more than 1 billion would-be consumers, and increasing numbers of whom are reaching towards middle-class status. It's also a home to a huge chunk of world natural wealth, don't we know this? Yeah? Though that accounts for a small sliver of the continent's overall growth than most people think. Right? She has painted Africa into a kind of a prospective heaven that all of us want to be part of. It's no longer that dark continent where we want to run away from. Okay? And in one of the chapters, it's about Kenju. I don't know, you probably knows it better than I am. Kenju is about breaking rules. Is that how it is pronounced? Konju. Okay. And the fine line, he says, the fine line between genius and crimes, or the fine line between genius and madness. Yeah? And therefore, when we meet Africa in Malaysia, we have to understand this idea. Where is the fine line? Yeah? And I will try to illustrate basically what it's all about. It's supposed to be a Yoruba word for hustling, I think perhaps a better word than that. Yeah? A breaking rule ethos that makes modern Africa, Africa with a K not a C, works against the backdrop of corrupt and failed bureaucracies. And this is their word, not mine. Yeah? Corrupt and failed bureaucracy is everywhere, and I think it's also part of Malaysia, except they have not announced it. And her thesis is the concept of Konju describes the specific creativity born from African difficulties, and we know this. Yeah? Necessity is a mother invention. Africa, given this stature it is now, forces this breaking rule ethos to be part and parcel of the creativity of the people. The fruit of African efforts to help themselves, and it is particularly important for Malaysia, that we need to help ourselves through creative means that sometimes involve breaking the rules. Okay? So I do not understand, and I hope Asma will make this change, that breaking rules is an acceptable practice. Yeah? In one of the most successful company, 3M, all employees are expected to break the rules 15% of their time. Because breaking rules bring change. Okay? So we cannot not to break rules and expect change to happen. But like I said, we must know how to break the rules. And she has painted Africa not in a geographical map. She has painted Africa in a mindset map. And these are the 5 maps that she's got. The family map, the technology map, the commercial map, the nature map, and the youth map. And she's argued how Africa actually is making the change, whether we realize it or not, because the mainstay of understanding Africa do not dwell into this. People are still saying that Africa is bankrupt, Africa is a dark continent, Africa is this and that, and we know all this sort of. And she's making a different argument, that Africa will be a different Africa if these are the maps that need to go to. And I think we need to start thinking of the kind of maps that we've got culturally, traditionally, and the kind of values that governs us as Malaysia, not as a Malaysia, that peninsula with, with Sabah and Sarawak on the east side. And that is, I think, the kind of approach that is very biological in nature, because it remains in the context of what it is as far as Africa is concerned. And some of the quotes that I think is worth looking at, it says the best solutions are local, developed by people closest to the problem, not bureaucrats in Washington or Brussels. And this is where I say we need to think for ourselves, not to depend on people outside. Often we say, look at this, look at that, that's fine, but let us find a solution for ourselves because we know the problem better. And indeed, this book illustrates millions of times that they solve their own problems if only we pay attention to them. Yeah? And this is another one. He says, it turns out we have been throwing a party in an empty ballroom when we talk about, how Africa is actually led by Western aids. Aids are there for them to help you and take back whatever they give you. Aids are not there for them for it to stay. Yeah? And aids often have got string attached. And this is something that they have learned. And another very celebrated professor, again a Nigerian, that talks about these people who come and help you will mess up your country. And it will take a long time for them to admit and then say, we do not have the answer. And again, a very, very profound article that talks about how Europe is undermining African development. And this is after Berlin of 1884, where they spliced up and divided Africa into what it is now. At the end of the day, Africans are settled to settle their own problems, and these people will come up to just mess it up again. Yeah? It took almost 2 decades of destruction for modern development partners to admit that mistakes were made. They don't know the problem of Africa. Africans know their problem better. Yeah? And that no one has all the answers. Then why do they come to Africa if they don't have the answers? And then the answers is, of course, different rather than trying to have Africa. Perhaps to have Europe more than Africa. Yeah? So, one of the biggest problems, according to Ola Padi, with the world's long-time orientation towards Africa is a preference for interaction between governments or between formal institutions. And I saw some of the slides that you showed, Professor is basically working at the JVG, which is fine. Yeah? But according to her, the most vibrant, authentic, economically significant interaction are between individuals and decentralized groups. Yeah? It's again the same experience in Latin America, the little land. All negotiations are done outside the offices, between individuals. They go into the offices just to sign off what they have agreed. Petronas has been in Latin America. They have been in Latin America for 3 months now, not making any deals because they want the negotiation to be done in the boardroom. Latin America says this is not the way we work. And Petronas is going to go home without any single investment. Because we don't understand the psyche, the culture, how these people work and how they interact. And this is what I think we need to begin to be sensitive about when we want to talk about, working with others. And I'm comfortable with this people-to-people sort of interaction because it goes back to this whole age of biology that we talked about. This natural link that we need to develop, not because of governments, but because we find it is useful for us to work to solve the human problem, as it were. Africa has got, again, the youngest continent from this color you can see. Yeah? But yet again, Africa has got this problem that this one-time minister says they are not bringing enough youth. And this is where I think Malaysia should now start to work with Africa at a youth sort of level. Bringing students in, and trying to interact because this will have the young population of Africa and of course the young population of Malaysia. Okay? And because according to her, youth do not carry this albatross of failure, they don't. Youthful population in Africa today had no idea of colonialism. It's a story to them. They didn't know military rules. It's strange to them. They're intolerant of poor performance. I think it is important. Yeah? We have been tolerant for poor performance for a long time. They are intolerant of poor performance. They don't understand why they should be their lords. And for us to organize universities for youth, we'll need to take this into cognition that poor performance is no longer acceptable, not only among ourselves, but among our our students and the youthful population. And they don't vote. There is this T-shirt awaiting instruction, no. They will do what they please with the kind of technology they've got and the mindset that they're built for. So they don't wait for instruction. If your instruction comes at the last hour, they don't care. They will go on anyway. So it's better for you to be fast and quick as far as instruction is concerned if there are things to do. What this means to me is basically we have been so attuned to somebody writing the rules for us. Yeah? And often it's the rich, the powerful, the influential will write the rules for us. And for us who are weak and the meek and the poor, will just tag along. Yeah? And I'm particularly not concerned about use of words. One is human capital. Yeah, I've mentioned it to you. I've just written an article where the Surani has distributed. I'm not very particular about this word moderates. As a knowledge seeker, I cannot be a moderate knowledge seeker. I cannot be a moderate learner. I need to be an extreme knowledge seeker. I need to be an extreme learner. Yeah? So where do we emphasize, where do we put this word moderate? And we are now being asked to be moderate just because, and there is the article mentioned to you, the RAND Corporation has recommended to the US government to build moderate Muslims networks around the world, targeting first of all liberal, secular Muslim intellectuals and academics. We are now the targets of these moderates. And if you don't understand where this word comes from, or the epistemology of this word, then we just sucked it into this movement called moderation. I'm not against being moderate, but let's understand where the context is all about. Because somebody is writing the rules for us, and we are just supposed to tag along. I'm not willing to tag along. And I think we should not be willing to tag along until we understand where the context is and what is the consequences of this context. Yeah? And that article will explain to you why I'm not happy with the word moderate Muslims. And let me just tell you what it means by people writing the rules for us. And this is a case where everybody can share. Let's look at the world map. This is a world map that all of us are used to. And we are quite comfortable with this world map because this is a world map that is passed on to us. Yeah? A more glossy kind of world map so that we can make some sense of it. Yeah? But let me ask you a number of questions on this world map. We have been playing with this world map since we were in kindergarten. So we should know this world map by now. And if people ask you the question, the land masses in the North Hemisphere equal or greater than the Southern, what would you say? If you look at it now. Perhaps it's true. Yeah? But it is not correct. The total mileage in the North is 18 million or so, and it's half of the Southern Hemisphere. But the map tells you a different story. Because somebody has drawn the map for you, and you've accepted that this map is the true map. Right? One mistake, you can forgive it. Let's look at the second one. Europe appears to be about the same size as South America. Okay? Again, it is not true. Europe is probably a third smaller than South America. Right? Now, my African friend should be able to answer the third one. All North America appears to be about a third larger than Africa. Right or wrong? Again, it is wrong. Total square miles of North America is 7.4. Africa is definitely a third bigger than North America. Now, this is just to illustrate. We are given knowledge, we are given information, but who verifies this? We are given the word, who verifies it? Do we take it lock, stock and barrel, being in the university and an intellectual so-called? Or do we question this? And this is where, the role of the university needs to come to terms. Yeah? And therefore we have got this flawed worldview. And I'm concerned about this worldview that we are inheriting now. Whose worldview are we inheriting? Is it ours or is it somebody else? Yeah? When I'm asked as a Vice Chancellor, is your class a world-class university? I will ask, whose world are you talking about? My world and your world may not be the same. And therefore our worldview may not be the same. And I cannot live with a flawed worldview that do not conform to my needs. Yeah? And just for your information, if you someone redraw Africa, you can have United States of America and Canada in one corner. You can still feel in China, India, and part of Europe. Yeah? That's the vastness of Africa, not the kind of map that was given, drawn by a European called Mercator. And Mercator drew it with a purpose, and the purpose is to illustrate the benchmark of Northern Hemisphere, Europe per se. There are more. Yeah? Alaska is 3 times bigger than Mexico, which is not true. Scandinavia is bigger than India. Greenland is almost twice double the size of China. So all this is contained in information that we have been drilled upon for years and years, and yet we have not questioned it. And I think the time has come that we need to question everything that comes to our table through our internet, through our phones, and find out whether this is the kind of thing that we need for ourselves and the education that we want to do. Worst off is this map. You can see this map. Africa is just bits and pieces. Africa does not exist. Yeah? The missing part is a larger part of Africa. And that missing part is equivalent to half the world population of 3 billion. They are not considered just because their GDP is considered less than 5%. You can find again, yeah, the kind of rules that people write for you. If your GDP is less than 5%, then you are not significant, you don't even exist. Yeah? We want only to work with people of a different character and a different characterization. So, issues of this nature, I think, is important for us. And why do I need to work with Nigeria? Is Nigeria in the map? Not in the map. And in fact, my point is basically, let's work with country that is not in the map. Because it's our duty to bring them up together with everybody else, not to marginalize them. So, whether this map is true or not, we do not know. But that is the kind of thinking that these people have when they talk about economic well-being, especially the IMF, is a map of the IMF. So, the rules that has been written for us basically has certain implications to it. And as far as this map drawing is concerned by Mercator, it separates the elements of humanity. It fails to highlight the kind of network or the pattern that I mentioned to you earlier in the age of biology, and North is taken as a benchmark. Yeah? Again, I have nothing wrong with North, but if it's a benchmark, then let's make sure it is a benchmark that's applicable to us at the same time. Right? And I happened to meet this professor from UNISA, where I was in Cape Town just last month, and we talked about the same thing, and he made a presentation which I thought was very, very exciting. Okay? And one of the presentations, he says that emerging societies, and that's societies like us, including Africa, cannot do just with more mere components of global information. That map is one example. There are many of this global information that comes to us. Okay? To remain human, viable, and livable, knowledge societies will have to be societies of shared knowledge, in which a solid S is attached at the end of the word knowledge itself. In other words, our knowledge also counts. Yeah? Our values also count. Our traditions also count. It is not just your tradition, your values, and your norms. And there is the issue, I think, that we really need to argue. Where do we put our knowledge? Where do we actually bring it and put it part and parcel of the world knowledge repository? How do we do this? And this, I think, is the challenge of university in the issue of biology, so to speak. And she made another very pertinent observation. We need revolution, yes, but the revolution is not a revolution of technology, not a revolution of machinery, techniques and software or speed, but a revolution in concepts. because our concepts are perhaps different from their concept. And that concept is manifested in the way we think. And this is a statement not only from her, but also taken up from UNESCO. Oftentimes, when we talk about the university, Al-Qarain is a good example as well. Yeah? The concept of Al-Qarain is gone, and that's why you see Al-Qarain is dying. Yeah? Al-Qarain is not recognized as the world's first university. The world's first university is recognized by Europe as the University of Bologna of 1088. And the University of Bologna has got a principle to say that all universities must be the trustees of European humanistic tradition. If you don't have that, you are not a university. Since when university in Malaysia and in Nigeria needs to be the trustees of European humanist tradition? We have got our own tradition to look at. And here's where concept. And the concept of universities now is very much Eurocentric in nature, and that's why 2 weeks from now we're going to have the third conference on decolonizing universities, leadership and knowledge democracy. We need to rebuild, reconstruct this concept if we were to have a meaningful living for ourselves, not as an artificial human being, learning from concept of others that is totally alien from us. Yeah? So this is the issue, I think, that we need to start looking at as far as moving forward is concerned, whether we up in the rank or otherwise. So to my mind, another world is possible. Look at the map again. This map is redrawn. Africa is bigger than United States of America, as it should be. Yeah? This is redrawn. Greenland now is smaller as compared to China. Okay? But I'm not still happy with this. Because why do the North needs to be on top? Why can't the North be in the South? Who says the North must be on top? The Muslim cartographer, Idrisi, when he drew the first map, the southern continent is on top. The northern continent is below. Somebody must have changed it halfway through. This may be possible. This may be the map that we want to hang in our offices. This will tell us another world is possible. That we can change the rule of the game. And we can be in the north just by redrawing the map. The world has not changed, but our mindset certainly will have changed. And that is what comes at the end of the day. Yeah? So this is what I think we need to be talking about. And the time is now for this change. And in USM, we've tried with this Blue Ocean Strategy. Blue Ocean Strategy is about making change in a different way. And the author of this, who is from INSET, talks about never try to imitate anybody. And as well, again, I'd like to say, you're not imitating anybody, you're picking your own path. Because as long as you benchmark with somebody, at best you will be like them. Meanwhile, the person you benchmark is ahead of you, you will never close the gap. And I worry about ranking being this. I worry about ranking being a catch-up game, trying to imitate somebody else. We will never be the first until and unless we break the rules. And therefore, in Blue Ocean Strategy, it says, make competition irrelevant. Don't compete, in other words. Collaborate. Work as a network, so that then you can move up together rather than competing, which is called the Red Ocean Strategy. Anyway, yeah? So this whole mindset of follow Harvard as a model is repugnant to me. Harvard was created for its own purpose. MIT was created 150 years ago. And the president then says, I need to create a new, different, bold university. The president did not say, I need to create a university that looks like Harvard, although Harvard has been there for more than 100 years. Why does he say, I need to create a new, bold, and different university? Because he says, I'm grappling with the industrial age. Harvard was created before the industrial age. And you look at MIT now, it's very different from Harvard. It's still a world-class university in that particular context. Why can't USIM build a different, bold, different university? Because the age we are in now is a different age altogether. Why can't other universities do so? Because your context is different. So create your own university, create your own rules, be good with it, and create your own excellence. I think that's the way to go. We don't have to admit it. Other work is still possible. And one way of it is to define what education is all about. As we talk about higher touch, community engagement, social commitment, education according to the civil rights activists, married element, education is improving the life of others and for living a community and the world better than you found it. It is not about me. It is about everybody else but me. And that, I think, is a very noble way of creating another world. Yeah? How do we actually make a difference in the life of others through your own do or die kind of spirit? And therefore, I'm moving now close to what this Akli-Nakli is all about from what I understand. We need to bridge this gap. We probably cannot get rid of this whole human capital. It's in 2 million documents. But we need now to bridge this. And this bridging is where I think your Akli-Nakli comes in. Yeah? And inshallah, I think in the next 2 weeks we're going to bring another Cambridge scholar that will talk about a variation of Akli-Nakli, what we call the Mizan initiative. It's not a moderate initiative. It's probably an alternative to the moderate thinking. A Mizan initiative where you actually see a balance between the two. So we need now, basically, in this particular context, to move away from this mechanistic, very dehumanizing, almost a lifeless, non-organic, yeah, a KPI director. You work on numbers. I want numbers, you get numbers. Yeah. How do you move that to a kind of a organic, very human, and a KIP is the word that I use for key intangible performance. This is where your ethic, your spirituality, your akidah, your values comes in, and you're guided by it. And it's rooted in life. It is not rooted in a factory somewhere. And how do you do that? How do you get this heart beating as far as that? How do you balance it? And I think this is a challenge that USIM has taken for itself, and I'm grateful they do, because they are going to break the rules, I hope, and they're going to create another world which is possible for us. And just to let you know that you are not on the wrong track, because in the last 20 years, the notion of intangible values has gone into very deep discussion. Yeah? Since the year 78, when you talk about intangible values, probably about 5%. In the year 2004, we talk about intangible values as an asset, it's about 98% or 90%. And now perhaps even more. So this notion of intangible values, though it wasn't acceptable then, it becomes a currency now. And we need to now work on this, what intangible values is all about, and how we can create a balance between what we know as far as the tangible values is concerned. So this picture now needs to change. Well, money, I think, is important, but it also needs to be tempered with these intangible values of ours. Yeah? That money is not the source of all things, but money is relevant because it creates intangible values and it helps somebody else to change their life. This heart is supposed to be beating, but somehow or other it doesn't beat today. So this whole notion of virtues, the whole notion of justice, mercy, humility, yeah? How do you bring this into your curriculum? How do you manifest this in the university? How do you actually make this work as a kind of a balancing act as far as knowledge and education is concerned? How do we walk the talk? Yeah? I think this is a big question. And this cannot just do on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It is more than that, because science, engineering, and mathematics are basically, in that context, very the same. How do you change education to edu-action? There is a do and die spirit, not publish and perish. Yeah. How do you connect between the brains and the hands to the question of the heart, which is actually the balancing act. And education becomes then a learning tool to help other people and to make sure humanity works as such. I just forget about this for a time. Maybe it's something that we grew on. Why, at the end of the day, we need to work, and here's a kind of a roadmap that I suggested, where they will work. We still need to try it out when we do our research on leadership. But at the end of the day, what we want to see is this beating heart is kind of connected to the vibrant mind. It is not an independent. After all, in Islam, we believe that the other intellect, seed of the intellect, is the heart rather than just the mind. We need to work how to actually manifest this, and how then we can get the balance, the mizan that I talked to you about. Why this is important? Because at the end of the day, it is a question of whether we do or die. The world is in such a dire state. Yeah, that this whole global warming. There's already a work I think I mentioned to you about a prediction that there will be a collapse of Western civilization before the year 2100 goes off. Yeah? In fact, the date was pinpointed as in 2073. If you don't work on the global warming and all the other things that's happening to the world today, Western civilization will just collapse. Right? And that's because 4 billion people is living on less than $3 a day. Yeah? And it's about 10 ringgit. You cannot survive on 10 ringgit a day. And Paul Collier called these people the bottom billions, which is part and parcel of the vision that we have got in trying to restructure USM, at least at that particular time. So therefore it becomes inherently unsustainable, it cannot last. It will cause corruption, frustration, alienation, civil strife. We see more and more often today. And ultimately collapse both on the human and the environmental front. A child dies every 5 minutes now as a result of hunger. Yet, we talked about this last time when we had our dinner, so much billion of tons of food is wasted every year. And people in that particular restaurant put a bet in, do not waste food. Right? And this is a kind of contradiction you see. People are dying, and yet we have wastages of food. Yeah? And if you want to live the kind of rules that they write for you, this is the kind of map that you will get at the end of the day. The people who waste a lot of food are the people who are actually on the north. Look at Africa. Africa is as skinny as Roshada. And these are the people who need the food, and the people who are wasting the food are people who are in red. Yeah? And yet we are told to live like the Americans. Everybody wants to live like the Americans. Americans need 5 planets just to sustain how they live. We don't have 5 planets. What we have now is half a planet. The other half planet has been squandered away. Yeah? You want to live like the European, fine. You need 3 planets to support you. Yet all our mechanism tells us this is the way to live. Our child has been born to eat French fries all the time. They don't want nasi lemak anymore. Because it's not European enough. It's not civilized enough. You know, this is the contention I think that we are facing today. How do we fatten up Africa and make North America more lean? That is a rule that we need to write for ourselves. Because they don't give a damn whether you actually, skinny or otherwise, or you die. We need to write our own rules, and this is where I think we want. Jeffrey Sachs in his book on poverty, he talked about poverty again. He said, if you want to calculate poverty, it's about 20,000 people dying every day. And what is 20,000 people dying every day? Since we are talking about airline missing and airline destruction, I will convert this to the airlines. And it means 40 jumbo jet crashes every day, and all the passengers die. We've got an Asia missing with 150 odd passengers. The world is, running amok on this. Imagine every day since so many years before, 40 jumbo jets has crashed every day. Nobody said a word. Nobody even cared. Where is the contradiction? And this is something I think that we need again to highlight in the systems that we are having today. Because at the end of the day, this year is the end of the Millennium Development Goal, December 2015. They've been going on for the last 25 years. We need to unlock the door, and what do we see? Yeah? Do we see this? Chances are we will. Yeah? So what is this program for 20 years that we have run under the leadership of the United Nations? All of our head states have signed on to it. Why are still people dying? What has the university done? There is a question that I will be asking, be answering as the president of IDU during this particular conference. Yeah. Where has the university contributed? What knowledge has been brought to lead to this kind of an issue? So, very summarily, I'm going to say this because a lot more Muslim scholars say, and I'm a little bit nervous to talk about this. I'm just learning about what this Maqasid is all about. But all that I mentioned to you actually could be summarized in this idea of what this Al-Maqasid is all about. Yeah? So some of us, when we talk about the word Sharia, we begin to imagine people cutting somebody's head or somebody's hand, or do whatever other terrorist thing that we have been so accustomed to, given by the media feed. But to me, it basically means this: you need to preserve and protect and promote. Yeah? Religion is a kind of a belief, and that belief is normally and always is, perhaps, a peaceful living. You need to protect and promote life, prevent killing. What we see in TV today is basically just not part of this Maqasid. We need to protect intellectual thinking, and this is where education comes from. If we believe in the Al-Maqasid, are we promoting intellectual belief? Or are we basically saying that I just want to know what I need to know? Other opinions to me do not come, and I'm scared of those opinions. Yeah? Are we protecting prosperity? In other words, it's talk about sustainable development. The generations that are going to come after you, many, many generations, are we responsible for them? The Maqasid say we are responsible for them. Are we preparing a life for them? Do they still breathe the same air that we breathe? Do they still have the kind of luxury that we do have? If we do not, then we are not working in the context of the Maqasid. And last but not least, the property. The property in the modern context, in the country context, talks about also the environment as an asset that's given to God by us. Are we protecting this? Are we enhancing this? It's just not about your house, your home, your car, but it's an environment that you live in, part and parcel of the Aman that is given to God. Do we do this? And all this, I think, is summarized in what I've just mentioned to you in the last 45 minutes or so. A few more slides and I will just finish on this. Yeah? The idea is basically to make sure that we ensure justice, and this justice perhaps is just put on two balance. One is to alleviate hardship, and that's why I say we need to work with a country with a GDP less than 5. People who don't have anything to give to us, we need to work on that, and I'm glad that Muslim again is taking over this time. And to eliminate prejudice, basically, that is the kind of injustice that we see today with the social media, with the kind of proliferation of knowledge that we do not know whether it is flawed knowledge or not, just as the world map that I mentioned to you earlier. Let me just conclude by saying, by quoting more, intellectual giants, Ali Mansuri, who just passed away last October, and he talked about Western culture is a dominant global culture. The validity of this culture needs to be challenged, and it is being challenged. Yeah? And it's challenged, take it not in a terrorist sense, not in the sense that you're an extremist, you don't accept their way of life, but challenge in the sense that you need to find a balance, the mizan we talked to you about. More local person who is in Singapore. While Western ideas and best practices have found their way into our minds, hearts and soul of other civilization remain intact. And are we assured of that? are we keeping this heart and soul of our civilization intact? The deep reservoir of spiritual and cultural strength in other cultures have not been affected by this Western lineage. Are we also sure that? Yeah? How do we actually make sure that there is again a balance? And I'm not saying again, reject everything that's West, but I'm saying let's find a balance somewhere. Certainly now the world is collapsing. That is from my point of view. The globalized world is not the world that we actually cherished at the beginning of the century. A lot more problems to point to it. And therefore we need to find an alternative. My lifestyle look at this. Yeah? The future of higher education and international, we need another world. And once we begin to look at the maps, be it mental or geographical, for what they are and understand each map is published and accomplished with a specific purpose. These maps means also the rules and and the league tables and whatever it is. A whole new and much more realistic view of the world emerges. The best lesson that can come out of this is to realize another world is possible, and we need leadership to make it happen. And that leadership is basically anchored on the kind of education we give ourselves and our children ahead of us. On that note, thank you very much. And
which has brought in another worldview. But I think that do we need to go this length in making a point? The point we want to make is so simple as far as I'm concerned. But we have to go through this torturous process to convince people that the point needs to be made. But I don't think it's necessary. The reason for that is this. What is education and what is knowledge? I think our problem is that we are taking knowledge to be education. We are taking acquisition, the cognitive aspect of education, as the whole of education. And what is happening is that you are educated only if you have knowledge. We have not taken into consideration that education is not another word for knowledge. The affective in education is what we have discarded, and we have narrowed down to just education. But even in the Western world, when degrees are being awarded, we talk of the awarding degree for character and learning. But we are no longer measuring character. We are awarding degree only for learning. Which means, ab initio, right from the word go, we are on the same page. Everybody agrees, whether from the east or from the west, that education should be knowledge and character. But along the line, because we felt that character cannot be measured, we felt that it cannot be measured, it cannot be examined, because it can change. Forgetting that knowledge itself can change. What you know today, I tell people, I speak English now. If I go to the Republic of Benin, I become an illiterate, because to communicate, I have to, because I don't understand French. So we think that knowledge can be measured, but character cannot be measured. And therefore, we drop the issue of knowledge. I think the tool we now need of character, the tool we now need, in my view, is to come back to the same table and say, look, we all agree that non-education must be knowledge with character. What are the things to be done to bring the character aspect back into knowledge so that we can measure both knowledge and, because two things then came in from your presentation. The first one is critical thinking. which the DG mentioned when talking. Critical thinking. It takes critical thinking to know that the map is wrong. Because ordinarily, people who pass through university and they become professors of geography without, they'll just tell you, light travels, two parallel lines can never meet. How long have you drawn them to know that they will never meet? These are theories that some people just construct and pass to us, and critical thinking is the first thing. That is, we want to think and re-examine everything, and that is the purpose of a university. Universities are established to examine and re-examine, and that is why we talk of research. We believe people are searching everywhere, but in the university, we need to reconfirm, we need to research, because the generality of the society is searching. The first thing, in my view, that we need to bring to the table then is critical thinking. The second one is humanity. Are we humane? What are we doing? Are we thinking of just ourselves? If that is what we are doing, then we are not involved in the process of education. And that is why I believe universities have a role of reforming the society more than we do now. We are talking generally. This is UC. How many secondary schools are around UC? What is the performance of those schools? Why are they different from those that are far away from UC? Would the lecturer of chemistry in UC adopt a secondary school nearby and make sure that this is my own secondary school? Come back 5 years, the performance of this school will be different. As part of my social responsibility to this community, I think we are talking too much at the artificial level. We need to come back to practical life. And it is when we do that, that we will come. And that's why I've said, all that Stansry has done is to go at long length to call our attention with sweating to something that is easily available to us. And that is the fact that we all agree that without character, there is no education. There is no debate. Therefore, how do we start? How do we start the journey from now? Acting and not comes back to the same thing. We have tried all that knowledge can provide. What about those things that are natural, that are there, that God has given? Why can't we bring the two together and then make sure that at the end of the day, we serve the society better? Thank you.
My understanding in this is basically we have put ourselves in a kind of a paradigm that we need to break out, and this is where the discussion I brought in. I mean, I may be wrong, but the paradigm is basically very simple to me. It's until there is a thing, I still think that when we talk about employment and employability, we are talking about a kind of a commoditization of knowledge. Not even knowledge. To me, it's not even knowledge. All we need to do is to master a certain amount of skill or past or whatever it is. At the end of the day, you are judged whether you're successful or not if you can get employment. And my university, University of Science, has changed its convocation date from August to November. And I asked them, why do you want to do this? Because the survey of employability started 6 months after convocation. The student graduated, they finished their work in September, and they then got a longer period to find employment. So that by the time the convocation is over, 6 months after that, when they are now surveyed, more of them are employed. It's senseless to me. We are just actually cheating ourselves by manipulating statistics so that we say, oh, my students are good. But the knowledge they get is basically the same knowledge. We are not making them any better. And I'm glad to hear that you are creating jobs now rather than just filling and filling jobs. Yeah. And this is the context that I think we need to bring in. This discussion that I have, Asma is familiar with this, is basically to tell them, let's break the rules. You cannot make the university change unless the rules is broken. And I agree with you in the sense that we do not talk about character because character is not part of the KPI. Since when character is part of the KPI? We talk about everything else but character. And we are now into this idea, anything get measured, get done. You don't know how to measure character, you will not get done. These are the kind of paradigms that we locked ourselves in. You know? And I think we need to unlock this. And until and unless we unlock this, then whatever you said, through this, it may not happen. It did not happen in school. I was involved in the first blueprint, the secondary blueprint. The issues of ethics and spirituality wasn't there even. Everybody talked about critical thinking, knowledge, leadership, bilingualism. And I asked the same question. How do we ensure that these students have got good character? The knowledge you give them? Are you sure? What is the foundation of that? You know? And then reluctantly, ethics and spirituality comes in. But until now, it is not worked because they think it is not measurable and therefore it is not. So the argument that we are going into, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically we are locked up in this paradigm. We want something, but we are not able to reach it because we are locked up in that particular paradigm. I would agree also with you in the context that education, knowledge is a free flow. And that's why I'm promoting very much this transdisciplinary knowledge. When I became a vice chancellor as a pharmacist, I know zero about management. What right have I got to be a vice chancellor when I don't know anything about management? Worse still, 10 years later, I find that the knowledge that I'm giving to my students are not true knowledge. They are all decolonized knowledge, just like the map that I showed you. And that's why we move into this conference of decolonization. To tell ourselves what is true knowledge. It's not the canned knowledge that comes out of MOOC. We are now moving into MOOCs. You know? Because somebody said MOOCs is good. It's a canned knowledge. You will never get anything beyond what we talked about. So the Islamic way of thinking as far as knowledge is concerned, and I think it's also said by Professor Asante, that we live and learn at the same time. There's no difference between today we learn and tomorrow we live. We live and learn at the same time. It is almost integral. And that's why you find the apparatus system in the Islamic system, the Pondok system, is such. Now we are going back in a very artificial way. We talk about community engagement and so on and so forth. In the university, I tried to work in the Al-Bahari system. We talk about working with the community for the whole year. But again, you know, that university did not survive because somebody said to the owner, this is not a university. The university is about employment, employability, poor ranking, and so on and so forth. So it does not work. So the issue that I see today is basically we need to break up this paradigm. And the argument that I presented, perhaps, you know, is a long-winded way of saying so. And perhaps to the bureaucrats, this is something that they need to listen and not to show. I probably would want to get some comment from Asma.
Whose character are we going to be portraying? And how do we standardize character, especially in a world of very different values? Again, considering that within the system that we're introducing character now, we have people of questionable characters themselves. So, exactly how do we move on from here? I mean, very concrete and practical steps. I think the point has really been made. We are in a world of crisis now, and we have come to identify this. Unfortunately, we're not immediately there to go to the grassroots. If this could have been tackled from the grassroots, it would be excellent. But we keep finding ourselves at the junction of reformation. How exactly do we move on? And what are the basic elements of this character that at least we can start with as a global phenomenon?
At a very international level. For example, I know there's a study that looks at Al-Maqasid that I mentioned to you and the 10 commandments of Christianity. There's a study that looks at the religious tenets of characters and matching that with universal human rights. Yeah? There's a group that has come with a set of 12 gold standards looking at various religions and taking the commonalities of this religion. So I think picking up on what the characters are may not be as difficult as how to actually enforce it. When I had this challenge in Al-Bukhari University, I still talk about this, we've got 6 core values. And the question that I asked my staff and my students, how do we know by the time the students leave that these core values is embedded in them? Rather than just reciting it on the walls. We are very fond of doing that. It's everywhere in the walls, but it's not in ourselves. Whereas the Japanese have it differently, none on their walls, but it's all in themselves when they talk about Kaizen, for example, continuous improvement. They don't find many of this in the world, but it's kind of inherited in part of it. So the issue, and this is where I come into contention that the way we teach, the way pedagogy has been done in classroom, needs to be relooked, apart from the kind of characters that we select for our own students to teach. The kind of teaching that we did, I don't think, I've got another slide which I didn't show, that I can map, for example. The teaching of students in the university is just like a factory. I can almost map, say for example, you bring in the raw material, which is the student, fresh from zero, no knowledge, nothing. And then we give them the kind of value add, and this word value add comes in. In the classroom, that moves like the conveyor belts. They move from classroom to classroom with the sound of a bell. So 1 hour, next classroom. I, as a lecturer, becomes an operator that gives you this value. At the end of the day, there is this quality control called the exams. And you get these exams right, you go to a second conveyor belt called a second in the same process. And there are many people who have written, there is a good TED YouTube by Sir Ken Robinson. We want to bring him here. If you can bring him here, good as well. But it will cost us at least $1 million US. Again, I don't understand. These people have got good knowledge. We want to share the knowledge. He said, my value is $1 million US per trip, per lecture. He said, never mind, thank you very much. We'll work out on our own. He has made this. The system we've got now comes from the industrial age. It's organized like a factory. But industrial age has gone. We are moving to post-industrial age. But the school system, the university system, is still modeled on the archaic industrial age. And this is where I think the breaking of rules needs to come in. How do you reorganize? And we have done a small example just to illustrate. When we were asked to transform schools now, we picked 30 schools, they work on Kazana. How do you transform the schools? And basically, the students do not sit at theater styles anymore. The students sit like this, in a group of 6. The teachers is not in front, the teacher is everywhere in the classroom. When the teacher asks a question, we don't want hands anymore. I teacher, yang tak tahu will just keep quiet, let them answer. Everybody now is given a whiteboard. When the teacher asks a question, everybody must write an answer on the whiteboard and post it. Nobody can escape this. Right? And then in their own table, they will see whose answers is right and whose answers is wrong. For those who got the answer wrong, the person in the group must teach him why the answer is wrong and give him the right answer. The teacher does not play a role anymore. You know? The classroom now, there's no more blank walls in the classroom. The classroom must be filled with charts or diagrams or whatever made by the students. You are not allowed to buy them. You want to have a world map, you draw them and you paste it. You know? So that has been going for 3 years. Now the Deputy Prime Minister just last year visited one of the schools. And guess who take the Deputy Prime Minister around? The students stand 5. Headmaster say, I'm not going to do it. The teacher say, I'm not going to do it. The student takes Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin around the school and explain to him what happened in the school. That is a level of confidence the student got. The student mastered Malay, English, and it happened to be an Indian school, also mastered Tamil. My issue here is that we can do the transformation, but why are we not doing the transformation? Why are we stuck with this old paradigm of ours? Why aren't the university pushing it up? You know, of course the ministry has got their own, priorities. The university must push, and that is the worth of the university. The university cannot be waiting for instructions, just like the boy just now. The university is the one that needs to push. And I am quite confident that Akli Nakli will work. And that's why I'm here, otherwise I will not come. It will work, but we need to push. And this will be the game changer. This will be the new world for education in Malaysia. It's not about Islam per se. I just don't want it to be misunderstood. That is about knowledge in not a compartmentalized way. Knowledge the way they teach this during the 8th centuries, where every person is actually master of at least 10 subjects. From astronomy to mathematics to music. Now music is a taboo. To medical to astronomy, all these things is mastered as is convergent of knowledge. Then I think that's knowledge. Otherwise it's not knowledge. So how do you go back to this? And I think this is something that we need to work on. Within that, the character comes along. It is not something we should compartmentalize, which is not something separate. Probably it's easier said than done, but there is already a model working around this, but we need to catch on this.
And I'm happy the issue of character is being tackled, because I always feel very concerned when we are awarding certificates and we say character is being found worthy, character and learning. Whereas it's only learning that we measure. Probably the character, we just felt that as long as we are not caught in any of the vices laid down by the university, whether because you are smart or you are honest, then you are okay. So I'm happy something is being done. But the other aspect that I want us to look at is what you raised. And that shows how global the world is. And that is on the issue of the educated ones, the elites, the lecturers. While we are busy mapping out the character for students, I think we should not forget the role played by the lecturers themselves. Because as you said, the elites are our problems. And that is what we think also in Nigeria. Because Nigeria of yesteryear was more united, more tolerant to each other, more focused. But these days, we have more educated people. And the whole country is becoming more and more difficult to manage. What do you think? Do you think it's because of the northern exposure to education? Because most of us probably were trained in US, Britain, and then we come back with their values. And we forget to look back or look around our immediate environment to see how we can champion this. Otherwise, we'll continue to struggle for power, for wealth, for parochial things that, are not progressive. So how do we handle that?
I'm very marveled when I see Nigerians wearing a national costume wherever you are. The issue that I think we are facing, at least from Malaysia's point of view, we have lost a kind of identity that we are now searching for. And there's a kind of a vacuum, if I look at Malaysia, there's a kind of vacuum of who is a Malaysian and what is a Malaysian. When I talk to my children, this is one of the bigger questions that we quarrel over. For them, the local value, local culture, local tradition has no quote-unquote value anymore. And because nationally we don't even give that kind of a priority. And therefore this vacuum is the one that actually drives them to seek for what is new and what is fashionable and try to adapt themselves into this kind of environment. Now I would start off with the question of language, for example. In language it is embedded so much of values. If you don't use the language, the value dies. And the National Geographic, I think, has made a survey that every 2 weeks, one language dies. A language dying means a whole sorts of wisdom die along with it. And this is a question, I think, that is very much educational in nature. Where do you bring back this value? My talk just now was basically about that. Where do we anchor this value? Where do you teach them? And how do we actually create a sense of pride in this value? I'm not saying that Asian values are more superior than American values or the European values, but yet American values is something that, comes on to us all the time, and we are not able to respond in that particular context. This is where I think education in Malaysia at least is amazing. I'm not too sure whether Nigeria is the same. We do not find a local context anymore. We do not find a local, when I talk about being organic, it is not rooted in Malaysia anymore. It is rooted elsewhere. And therefore, yes, we can be a global player. I'm not saying that we cannot be a global player, but you be a global player with your roots attached. You don't be a global player as another Mexican, as I reminded my son who is in Mexico. You don't go become a global player just because you're in Mexico and you can speak Spanish. You need to be rooted in your player. And this is where then I think education becomes very wholesome, that you can respond to an environment from your own perspective and not negating the other. And you become stronger when you know your own values, to engage with the other person. And I sometimes notice, to be very blunt about it, some Muslim students are scared. Suddenly when another student bring up a small Buddhist statue, because he or she is a Buddhist, and came to me when I was a vice chancellor, they said, I want to change room. I said, why? That guy had got a Buddhist statue about 2 inches high, placed in the room. And I become very, very scared in that particular sense, that you suddenly withdraw. Rather than engaging, you withdraw. And the kind of knowledge that you embed with yourself is very much for your own comfort and not allowing you to explore this so-called global citizenship sort of business that we talked about. So there is, to me, a very fundamental issue that is involved. The rest are nice on slides, but the person that you create at the end of the day is that the person that you want to represent, quote unquote, yourself and Malaysia. I think that's the issue that I want to leave you with. Maybe tomorrow when you hear the Nigerian experience, you can probably learn from you why are you wearing your Nigerian? I will wear my Nigerian outfit tomorrow. second part of it. But this is the issue that I think we need to. You know, Prof. Mukulu described as a parachute. Because I can imagine you travel with this parachute. How many parachutes have you got in your back? You know. So, but yet I think that sense of identity that you've got, and it's across all Nigerians, that we seem not to have. We seem to have lost it. You know? And this is something that is really terribly worrying, because we are starting from a very, very weak sort of foundation, as it were. And education, hit on a very weak foundation, becomes even worse. Then you get sink into the kind of value that is given to you. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope